So this is an unscripted video, which is me talking to the camera, going off my brain. And I thought, what good can come out of this? Nothing good can come out of this. But I feel like I need to say something here. My reading taste is changing rapidly before my eyes. Before my eyes? I guess it's not before my eyes at all. It's more internally, isn't it? Anyway, when I started reading, I'm not the kind of person who always have read and just continued into adulthood. I didn't read books as a child like, what is it called? Aragon, the dragon thing, and then just continue reading fantasy into adulthood. I made a deliberate choice at some point to start reading seriously. What do you do in that case? You go read, I guess, blog posts or watch YouTube videos about what is good, what is recommended, what is best for beginner within a genre, right? How do you know that you're at the right place as a reader? Let me explain. When I started, the content I just stumbled upon happened to be fantasy related, right? And I guess that made sense. I played a lot of video games where fantasy is a big deal. All the FromSoft, all the Dark Souls, all the Skyrim was a big thing back then. Dragon Age, and I played a lot of D&D. Right? Here's my dice. Give me some nerd cred. I have the dices. Don't know why I flexed those. They're actually really colorful because I play like a bard, and it's very. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. So I went into the pipeline of fantasy because that seemed like a reasonable take. I really enjoy the Lord of the Rings movies. I saw them so much as a child and as an adult. Everyone loves those. They're perfect movies, basically. I just ended up getting recommended a lot of fantasy stuff. And of course, the algorithm works that way that even though it wasn't as good at the time, you kind of get served more of that. And then I just, got into fantasy. I just started reading fantasy. And in the beginning, it was fine because I had no real frame of reference. But I've always been a guy who kind of branched out a bit and never really stuck to one script, so to speak. So I would read other stuff. I dabbled in Stephen King and Joe Hill, and it's actually a fun story. I read Joe Hill before I read Stephen King, and I did not know it was his son. And then I found out, Stephen King, yeah, I know him. He's like the author of the books from, Shawshank and, all those movies I like. So I guess, I gave him a try. And of course, that's a kind of a strange, maybe a downright stupid way to find Stephen King. But hey, might be the only one who read Joe Hill first and didn't know. Um, but my point is just that your beginner pack, so to speak, your starting gear, your where you spawn in the fandom, so to speak, depends so much on what you stumble upon. So I just read fantasy for the longest time, and I like it, and I still kind of like it, right? I like Madison a lot, clearly. I like First Law a lot, but the last year or so, I struggled so much with reading fantasy. I struggled so much with reading it in general. And I just thought I was the kind of guy, the kind of person that was just a fantasy reader. Like full stop. And even though I dabbled in other stuff, I always saw myself mainly as a fantasy reader. I never really got into sci-fi the same way. I tried, but I just didn't. Because I didn't stumble upon sci-fi when I started. Maybe if I had done that, I would have the same problem now. But with sci-fi instead of fantasy. My problem with this whole spiel is that I started reading shorter books, contemporary books, surreal books, books from in translation from all over the world, a lot of Japanese literature, and now I have gone on this giant mystery kick. I'm so into mystery books right now. It's frightening. It's actually embarrassing. And I always really liked mystery, in general. So it's not really that much of a stretch. I've come to the realization now it's so much easier for me to read those kind of books than it is to read fantasy books. I always struggled. I've struggled lately, the last year or so, with just reading in general because I could not pick up a book. I was like, oh, this book is not for me. I'm going to try another one, and then I'll read another fantasy book, and I just couldn't. I'm having such a hard time getting into it. And fantasy is there's a lot of new stuff. That's a different conversation altogether. But there's a lot of world building. You need to establish a whole new world and a whole new character and a whole new magic system, if they have a magic system, which you shouldn't have. Just have freaking magic, do magic stuff. I don't need a formula. I don't want to think. If you do a spell in your book and I have to crunch the numbers, you're doing it wrong. So it's not really that I thought, I might just be bad at, being a reader. It's more like, I don't think I am in the right genre. I just accepted this genre in the beginning. And I stuck to it maybe a little too long. And now I'm doing something else. And I might come back to fantasy. I'm not done with it. I'm not gonna be like, if I never see a dragon again, I'll be fine. It's just fantasy it's a lot of, I just have a hard time getting into it because it's front loaded with so much world building and characters and races and it's always big tomes of books. Like the Madison books, right? They're so big. And they're so long. It's not just a trilogy. Then there's like a trilogy and another trilogy and there's like 10 books. And I just could not get into it. I just cannot get into it anymore. You know how long I've been trying to read the third Song of Ice and Fire book? Very long. It's a long time. But I just can't. And it's so good, man. The characters are great. The plot is great. It's such a good book. But I just can't pick it up. I get exhausted by the idea of picking it up. And then I realized maybe I'm the idiot for trying to keep forcing myself to read stuff I don't really enjoy. At least not in this particular moment. So I guess this whole rant is more about me realizing that you should not fight. You should not fight against your reading habits. You should lean into them. If you're into a genre, lean into it, right? Because, my parents always read a lot. And they just read the same, Scandinavian crime stuff. And I don't really like those kind of books. But they just plowed through them, right? And when I went to university, there was a girl who really liked romance books. Like what's it called? Darker? Is that a thing? Is that a book? She really liked those kinds of stuff. And she just read so much and she just plowed through so many books a year, right? Meanwhile, I'm over here trying to read, I'd take a year reading War and Peace, right? And even though it's technically a great book, it's not a good trade-off to just read one book because you're forcing your way into it. I don't know why I said War and Peace. War and Peace is actually pretty dope. But you know what I'm saying? Like, forcing yourself to read, it can be fantasy. Maybe for some it's probably the classics. Like, I should probably read the classics. And then you open a Dickens novel and you're gonna be miserable because Dickens is overrated as hell. Yes, fight me. That's my take. That's my controversial take here, I guess. Dickens ain't all of that. I think Tolstoy's better than Dostoevsky. I don't know. I'm getting my hot takes out of the way right now. So yeah. So don't force yourself to read because that's a good way to kill anything. You never do that with anything else. You would never do that with anything else. You would never start a series on like Netflix and just watch 2 episodes and be like, I'm not really feeling this. Let me watch all 10 seasons. You'd be a freaking madman. And you would just procrastinate and you're never going to see it, right? And if you procrastinate reading, you're not going to read. And this whole channel is about reading. Do you see the irony? I think the video's done. I have nothing more. At this point, I'm running on fumes. So yeah, my point is read whatever you like. But be mindful of, because I've really thought about the pipeline. Like, okay, I started because I was just kind of, I fell into fantasy somewhat on accident. And I just stuck with it. But what if I had, what if my gateway was different, right? There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with fantasy. There's nothing really wrong with any genre. I think most people read wider. But then again, my parents just read freaking crime books and they love it, right? And I always joke with them because they're like, oh, this one's so good. It's the number 14. No, really, what was number 12 about? Let me guess. There was a murderer and he caught him. I'm done now. I'm done. Cut the video. Stop. Bye-bye.